I discovered my sister's plan to marry my husband, and the conclusion to this story is absolutely jaw-dropping. Here's how I turned the tables and got my revenge. I, a 30-year-old woman, have been married to Marcus, a pseudonym, who is 32 for 3 years. We first met in high school and reconnected years later. Once we began dating, our relationship quickly became serious, and now, 3 years into our marriage, we're still going strong. However, not everyone was thrilled about our union, especially my older sister, Na, who is also 32. Na had a major crush on Marcus back in high school, although he never reciprocated those feelings. He revealed to me a few months into our relationship that he hadn't even known about her crush. Despite this, Na chose not to attend our wedding and hasn't spoken to me since I announced our engagement, which was perfectly fine with me. She's never been fond of me, and I've never understood why. It's not a typical sibling rivalry where I'm the favored child and she feels sidelined. Our parents always treated us equally. Academically and in sports, we were on par with each other, and we don't even look that different. So her animosity towards me has always been a mystery. I had always tried to be friends with Na growing up, but I would always end up getting pushed away, so I eventually accepted that my older sister just didn't like me. We weren't close, so her absence from my wedding didn't bother me at all. We'd only see each other during holidays or family gatherings, and even then we'd ignore each other, knowing it was pointless to try and build a relationship with someone who seemingly had no reason to dislike me. Our relatives were aware of our strained relationship, so it wasn't something that needed much explanation. It was just understood that we kept our distance. But about 6 months ago, Na did cross a line, and it was downright pathetic. One night, Marcus received a drunken phone call from her. She rambled on about how he had married the wrong sister and insisted that she would be a much better wife than I was. Unknowingly, she was on speakerphone, and I was right there beside Marcus, laughing at her rant. She ended her call by declaring that she was going to marry him one way or another, even suggesting she'd be his mistress if that's what it took. I was shocked by how low she'd sunk. It was a mix of anger and amusement. Her audacity was both pathetic and infuriating, especially since I had done nothing to provoke her. So I decided I'd had enough. If she could mess with me, then I could mess with her too. I encouraged Marcus to flirt with Na and feed her false hopes. It was harsh, but I felt it was a fitting response. Marcus convinced her to come over to our house, promising they could get married right away. She agreed with glee, sounding like she hit the jackpot. The next day, Marcus and I set up a hidden camera in our living room, and I decorated our bedroom to look as romantic and wedding-worthy as possible. I then sat in the other room, ready to watch the show. It was priceless to see her trying to flirt with Marcus while he remained as stiff and awkward as possible. After a quick exchange of vows and rings, he told her to leave and to keep everything a secret until he said it was okay to share. He didn't even kiss her after the vows, and yet she still didn't seem to realize anything was amiss. After the mock ceremony, Marcus and I spent about half an hour laughing hysterically at the video. It was sad and almost pathetic how far she was willing to go just because of her hatred towards me and her desire for my husband. Too bad for her that Marcus's heart belongs only to me. We considered sending the video to our parents but decided to wait for the right moment. I knew Na would try something again, and that's when we'd reveal the video to our parents so they could see her true colors, someone willing to hit on another woman's husband just to get back at her sister. My parents always treated us equally, but they were disproportionately supportive of Na, even when she didn't deserve it. For instance, they had paid for her vacation to Spain a few months before my wedding because she claimed she was deeply affected by it and needed a break. I resented that they were falling for her victim act, but since they were also covering my wedding expenses, I couldn't argue that they were being unfair. They really weren't. Then, while I was on my honeymoon, they let Na stay with them because she was feeling lonely. I despised that she used my marriage to her high school crush as a ploy to gain sympathy from our parents, and they kept falling for it. I needed them to see that she was a terrible person and that they didn't need to keep feeling sorry for her. If I had to resort to something sneaky and underhanded to make them see the truth, I was prepared to do it. I just didn't want my parents to be taken in by Na's act anymore. We had to wait for the right moment to show them the video because I knew if I revealed our plan just because of a drunken phone call, they'd accuse me of being just as bad as her and nothing would come of it. So I needed to wait for her to mess up again. A few days ago, my sister made a public announcement that she had been married to Marcus for 6 months. Until then, they had kept it a secret, but she claimed she was now ready to reveal the truth. She even gave me a one-day ultimatum to vacate the house and hand over all my jewelry, declaring that, as Marcus's wife, she now owned everything that had once been mine. Marcus and I were at home when our inboxes were instantly flooded with messages, and our phones rang incessantly with curious relatives demanding to know what was going on. After their fake wedding, Na would frequently text Marcus, professing her love and asking when they would make their relationship public. Marcus would usually respond once a month, always reassuring her that the right moment would come. The last message she sent was 3 weeks ago, and it seemed she just couldn't wait any longer. I was stunned by her audacity to take such a drastic step, but I knew this was bound to happen eventually. I knew Na was bound to do something outrageously stupid, and this was her moment. Marcus decided to call her and recorded the call to gather more evidence for our parents. Despite the situation, she was incredibly confident, even though Marcus had handed his phone over to me without explanation. She truly believed she and Marcus were still married. She told me that begging or pleading wouldn't change the reality, so I should save my breath and think about what I'd do now that I supposedly had nothing. I couldn't help but laugh in her face before revealing the truth about what had happened 6 months ago. Of course, she refused to believe me and demanded to speak to her husband. I handed Marcus's phone to her and he spent the next 10 minutes convincing her that she had been duped. I don't understand how she fell for it. There was no priest, no paperwork, and even her so-called husband wasn't willing to talk to her more than once a month. Anyone with even half a brain would have seen the obvious signs that this whole situation was fake, and that Na had been duped. There were so many red flags, but she was too delusional to notice. Once she realized the truth, she completely lost it, screaming at us about how we had ruined her reputation and calling us evil and immoral for what we'd done. She sobbed, insisting that I had destroyed her life, but I honestly believe she did this to herself. She wanted my husband in my life so badly that she was willing to do anything for it. I don't understand how that's my fault. When I finally sent the wedding video to our parents and explained everything that had happened, since they had been getting numerous calls about Na's post and weren't very active on social media, they had no idea what was going on. Marcus and I laid everything out, hoping they would see Na for what she truly was, someone willing to destroy my home just to be with Marcus and take my life. But all my parents cared about was that I had been cruel and that Marcus and I had played a nasty prank on Na for no reason. They told me they were embarrassed by the antics of their fully grown daughters and even threatened to cut us both out of their lives. If we didn't grow up and issue a public apology to each other, I knew it would only get worse. I had a major argument with my parents who insisted that I should apologize to the woman who not only tried to steal my husband but also tried to take over my life. It didn't seem fair to me, and yes, maybe I had been a bit too harsh and taken things too far, but that didn't make Nina's actions right. My parents were fixated on the fact that what we did to Na was psychologically damaging, and they argued that instead of all the drama, we could have simply blocked her after the phone call and told them the same day rather than waiting and letting Na create a public spectacle. They believe both of us are too self-involved and need to reflect more on our actions. My mother told me that while Na might be a jealous homewrecker, I wasn't any better because what I did was psychotic. She couldn't believe she'd raised two daughters who hated each other so much that we'd stoop to any level for revenge, even at our age. I'll admit, that comment really hurt. It's been 2 days and I still can't forget it. Even though Marcus thinks our parents were too harsh, I don't know what to think right now. I regret making a fool out of my sister for 6 months by making her believe that my husband loved her back. Update 1. Hi everyone, I know I messed up, and I realize that now. Please ease up on the hatred. I'm a human being, and I made a huge mistake. What I did was cruel and unnecessary just to get my parents to cut my sister off. I didn't see it back then, but I guess I had grown to hate her just as much as she hated me, without even realizing it. Nothing justifies my actions, as they caused her unbearable shame and trauma. A few days after everything blew up, my parents shared some things with me about Na that I was completely unaware of, and I was at a loss for words. I'm ashamed of myself now and wish I could go back and fix things. We should have just blocked her number that day and moved on. Na is currently in rehab because, unbeknownst to me, she was struggling with a severe alcohol addiction. While I don't blame myself for her addiction, I do believe that she relapsed because of what I did 6 months ago. She had relapsed once before, but my parents managed to keep a close watch on her to prevent another relapse. However, after Marcus and I told her the truth, she relapsed again. Even the vacations my parents had been sponsoring for her, which I had misunderstood, were actually trips to rehab. To explain her absence at various events and holidays, they used the cover story of vacations. Na and I had pretty much stopped speaking after she moved out for college, so I had no idea what she was going through. My parents admitted that they messed up by not telling me the real reason for her absences and didn't foresee that their lies about where she was would backfire so drastically. They hadn't considered that I might feel jealous and seek revenge, which is what led to this whole situation. I'm really lost and feel incredibly guilty. Na had behavioral issues growing up, but I was never aware of them because my parents never told me. They had always tried to treat us equally, and I think they did a good job, but this was a consequence of keeping us apart that neither they nor we had anticipated. Honestly, both of us had lost any compassion for each other and had forgotten that the person we despised so much was also a human being. I deeply regret what happened, and I'm planning to visit her as soon as I can to apologize for everything. There are still many relatives and extended family members who are gossiping about what happened, and while I might have normally seized this opportunity to talk negatively about Na, I'm ignoring all of them now. I'm just praying that nothing too serious happens to her. My parents told me they found her passed out at her house, which was a first. Every other time she had relapsed, she was able to reach out to them for help while still conscious. When my parents didn't hear from her for 2 days after that post, they decided to check on her and discovered that she had relapsed again. I can't imagine how painful it must have been for my parents to realize that my sister and I had fallen so far apart that reconciliation seemed impossible. I'm just so sorry for everything that has happened. I don't know what else to say. I'm not sure why I'm sharing this here, but I feel like I have to put it out into the universe, hoping that somehow Na can feel it. I am truly, truly sorry. Update 2. I finally visited Na today. She was in really bad shape, and it was evident on her face. She's been in rehab for a few weeks now and is slowly recovering, but she wasn't in any condition to meet anyone, especially me. After much hesitation, she agreed to see me, and it was both weird and heartbreaking to see her like this. She didn't look ugly, but there was a profound weariness about her, as if she had been through something unimaginable. Walking into that room and trying to speak to her was incredibly awkward since we had barely treated each other like family once we reached adulthood. But we both knew we had to put all that behind us, or at least try, so that we wouldn't keep trying to one-up each other and drive ourselves crazy in the process. I apologized to her for everything I had done and admitted how insane it was that I hated her so much that I resorted to some soap opera-level stunt just to put her down and gaslight her, which was truly psychotic of me. She agreed and apologized for trying to get with Marcus as well. She told me she had always been jealous of me since we were kids because, once I was born, she felt I would become her competition. It was all internalized jealousy, which manifested in her behavior. She couldn't control it, so she felt the need to put me down and compete with me to feel like she had won. When Marcus agreed to marry her, she thought she had finally won, but that wasn't the case. She said she was finally done with the competition, and even though we weren't suddenly friends, it was certainly a fresh start. I'm truly grateful that I got a second chance. I would have hated myself forever if something terrible had happened to Na and would have blamed myself endlessly. I feel considerably better now. Update 3. Hi, I just wanted to clarify that Marcus and I are still together, obviously. I don't know who suggested that we had split just because I hadn't mentioned him in my updates. He knows everything that's happened with Na and has apologized to her as well. She didn't want to meet him, but she said she's over it now and understands that Marcus was just trying to be a loyal and proactive husband, and she isn't holding it against him. So, that's that. He felt incredibly guilty about everything too and was just as sorry as I was, if not more. I have no idea why people were bashing Marcus for being complicit and not fixing things, especially since I hadn't mentioned whether he had apologized or not. I hope this clears things up and that people stop calling us horrible names. We've apologized and Na forgives us. End of story. As for those blaming my parents and saying they're responsible for this situation, I don't see why that's the case. My parents could have handled things better for sure, but I believe they were trying their best to manage everything with sensitivity and kindness. Keeping my sister's alcoholism from me was probably in both our best interests. We hated each other, so why would it have mattered what the other was going through? They didn't know what would happen in the future, so I'm not going to blame them for keeping this information from me. They did what they felt was right, and honestly, I think it's fine. A lot of you still see my sister as the villain, and okay, maybe she is, but so was I. What I did was really messed up, so if I had a second chance to fix our relationship and have a normal family for once, I'll take that without question, even if it means forgiving my sister. Thank you. Update 4. Hi everyone, it's been a whole year since my last post, and wow, this feels surreal. I think I'm ready to share what's happened since then. Many of you warned me that my sister might backstab me again, and some suggested cutting my parents out of my life. Others thought I was the only toxic element in the situation and that everyone would be better off without me. I'm grateful none of those things turned out to be true. We're all happy with our respective lives right now. My sister and I made a genuine effort to reconnect and build a relationship after everything, as we were both tired of the constant fighting. It just wasn't worth it anymore, especially in our 30s with so many things to worry about. We decided not to spend any more of our precious time and energy on something as petty as our rivalry. So we started meeting for coffee every few months, not too often, but at least once every 3 months. We even managed to be nice to each other at one of our cousins' weddings, which shocked the rest of our family. Na and I aren't the best of friends, but we're trying to be. We're okay with each other now, and that's what matters. I don't think we'll ever be very close, but we're not going to actively try to hurt each other anymore. She's moving a bit farther away for a better job, and while that seems risky given her struggle with alcohol, my parents are going to manage that, and if they ever need help, Marcus and I will always be there for her. It finally feels like I have a somewhat normal family, and I'm really happy about it. I never thought Na and I would ever have any relationship, let alone a good one, but who knows? Maybe that's possible someday. I'm glad I didn't give up hope. Speaking of family, there's soon going to be an addition to ours. Marcus and I discovered that we're pregnant just a few weeks ago, and everyone is thrilled. I'm already a month in, and we announced the news to our close friends and family on FaceTime a few days ago. I called my parents and sister in a group, and when I shared the news, they all seemed really thrilled. Na seemed genuinely happy and even sent me a bouquet of yellow roses the next day to congratulate me. Life's been pretty great since then, and I guess that's how it is when you're not constantly filled with hatred and anger. I'm looking forward to pregnancy and motherhood, and I'm hoping for the best.